So we've gone straight into a fairly brutal climb up the side of do. Yeah, this is a 388 meter little peak. So hopefully when we get to the top of that.
WildBeare finally reveals the dark truth about solo female wild camping that social media rarely shows. WildBeare pulls back the curtain on the hidden realities of solo female wild camping, exposing challenges from gear failures to physical exhaustion that every aspiring camper needs to understand. As a matter of fact, during her 22 kilometers, 3-night trip, she encountered water scarcity and demanding terrain that tested her limits. This reveals what nobody discusses before your first solo trip: practical survival strategies, and why, despite the hardships, solo female wild camping remains a transformative experience worth pursuing. Keep watching to find out. The dark truth about solo female wild camping. Camping alone sounds peaceful when talking about the idea in a normal conversation. But once real experience begins, the reality feels very different, and physical exhaustion becomes one of the first things that hits harder than expected. Think about the amount of work that normally gets shared when more people are around. Now imagine doing every single task without help. Searching for firewood alone already takes time, but the real effort starts when dead branches have to be dragged back to camp, cut into smaller pieces, and split with an axe. After doing that for a while, arms start to feel heavy, breathing gets slower, and energy drops faster than expected. And that leads to another question that many beginners never ask early enough. How much energy does one person really use in a single day outside without rest? Camp chores never seem like much at first, but once tents need to be pitched, gear needs to be sorted, food needs to be prepared, and water needs to be collected, everything piles up at the same time. Without good organization, things get even worse. A small item gets lost inside a backpack, then everything has to come out just to find one tool, and that means wasting strength that cannot easily come back. While all of this is happening, another problem quietly builds in the background. Water gets forgotten. Food gets delayed. The body keeps working, but never gets enough fuel. How long can a body keep moving like that before something starts to go wrong? Many people only realize the damage after the trip ends. One hiker once noticed a loss of 6 to 7 pounds after only 15 days on the trail, which meant almost 5% of total body weight gone without even noticing during the trip. Appetite dropped, strength dropped, and tiredness became normal, but the warning signs stayed hidden until a mirror showed the change. Short trips might not show serious effects, but longer trips slowly turn small mistakes into real problems. Equipment problems make everything harder, especially because gear almost never breaks at a convenient moment. A backpack strap can come loose miles away from help, and suddenly, the whole trip depends on finding a way to hold everything together. Imagine walking through a long trail and feeling the strap pull apart at the bottom. What choice would remain in that moment? One camper once had to use safety pins just to keep the pack usable for another 30 miles. Water filters stop working without warning. Hoses get small holes that cannot be seen easily. And the only way to find the leak is to cut the hose piece by piece. Tent stakes bend when the ground gets frozen, and instead of going into the soil, the metal twists and becomes useless. Hiking poles snap, headlamps stop working, and inflatable mattresses slowly leak air during the night. What happens when sleep disappears because the ground feels too cold? Even small things like a loose water cap can turn into a big problem when 2 liters of water pour inside a backpack and soak clothes, food, and sleeping gear. Zippers break during rainstorms, stove lighters stop clicking, and waist belt buckles crack right at the start of a long trip. When problems come one after another, the real question becomes clear. How much patience does one person need to keep going alone without losing focus? Weather makes everything even more serious because temperature outside never feels the same as temperature at home. Many beginners think 45 degrees sounds comfortable, But standing outside for hours in that kind of cold feels completely different from stepping outside a house for a few seconds. Mountains stay colder than cities, and deserts surprise people with freezing nights after hot days. When the body gets tired, the body also gets colder. Metabolism slows down during sleep, and clothing that felt warm during the day suddenly feels too thin at night. Cotton clothing makes the situation worse because cotton holds moisture and pulls heat away from the body. A simple mistake in clothing choice can turn one cold night into a long struggle without rest. And that brings up another important question. How many people really check the weather the right way before leaving for a trip? Cost is another part that many people do not think about at the beginning. Camping looks simple from the outside, but good equipment quickly becomes expensive. A sleeping bag for cold weather can cost around $100, while cheaper bags only work in warm seasons. Knives, first aid kits, repair tools, and spare parts all add more cost. A basic first aid kit might be cheap, but a proper kit for remote areas can reach a few $100s. Then gear breaks, and replacements become necessary. What starts as a simple hobby slowly turns into something that needs planning, saving, and careful choices. Health risks make solo camping even more serious. Thousands of people end up in emergency rooms every year after outdoor accidents. Falls cause most injuries, especially in mountains where one wrong step can lead to broken bones or sprains. Contaminated water can cause stomach illness. Heat can cause exhaustion. Cold can cause weakness. Drowning accidents happen every year near rivers and lakes. When another person is around, help can come quickly. But when camping alone, every decision matters more. That leads to one final question that every solo camper eventually has to ask. How prepared does a person need to be before going far away from help? The honest answer always sounds the same. Preparation, patience, and awareness make the difference between a good trip and a dangerous one, and every experienced camper learns this lesson the hard way, sooner or later. Overcoming fear and building confidence. Starting small and building up always comes up whenever the topic of solo trips for women enters a conversation. And honestly, fear sits right at the center of everything. Fear shows up before packing even begins. Fear shows up before choosing a trail. Fear even shows up before stepping outside the front door. The biggest worries usually sound very familiar. What if something breaks? What if nobody is around to help? What if night falls and every sound suddenly feels 10 times louder? Those thoughts feel very real at the beginning, and nobody can pretend otherwise. But here is the part many experienced campers keep repeating. Fear does not disappear first. Experience comes first, and fear slowly learns to calm down after that. Instead of trying to remove anxiety completely, the smarter approach involves getting used to the feeling little by little. Think about it for a second. Would jumping straight into a long solo backpacking trip make sense for someone who has never even spent one night outside alone? Probably not, right? That is why the usual advice always starts small. Day hikes come first, especially on trails that already feel familiar. Well-known paths, places with other hikers around, and routes that do not require staying overnight help build comfort without too much pressure. Nothing extreme, nothing dramatic, just walking alone during the day and getting used to the silence. After that step starts to feel normal, the next move usually becomes car camping at developed campsites. This stage makes a huge difference because everything still feels close to civilization. There is running water, there are pit toilets, there are other campers nearby, and help never feels too far away. Setting up a tent alone, figuring out sleep gear, cooking food without anyone else around, all of that becomes practice, without feeling completely exposed. And honestly, that practice matters more than most people expect. How else would confidence grow without testing small things first? The first real solo backpacking trip usually needs careful planning, not bravery. Picking a location that feels familiar makes the whole experience easier. Trails with clear paths, low mileage, and not too much climbing help keep the focus on learning instead of struggling. Nobody wants the first solo trip to turn into a survival story. What happens if nerves suddenly take over? What happens if the setup goes wrong? Choosing a place where getting back to the trailhead does not take days makes everything feel safer. Some experienced campers even say that longer trips help fear go away faster, because the first few days always feel tense before the mind relaxes. But most beginners prefer short weekend trips, and that makes sense. Why commit to a full week before knowing if solo camping even feels right? Testing the experience slowly gives room to learn without feeling trapped. Mistakes happen on early trips, and almost every solo camper has at least one story about a night that felt way longer than it should have. Every small noise starts sounding like danger. A branch snaps, and the mind imagines the worst. Leaves move, and suddenly, sleep feels impossible. One camper once admitted that watching too many crime shows before a trip made the entire night feel like a horror movie. Nothing actually happened. Morning still came, but the night felt endless. That kind of experience sounds funny later, but at the time, the fear feels very real. And still, surviving that first bad night becomes the turning point. Once the sun rises and everything turns out fine, confidence starts growing. Not perfect confidence, but enough to try again. Fear never disappears completely, even for people with years of experience. Nighttime in the outdoors always feels different. The difference is that experienced campers learn how to deal with the feeling instead of fighting it. Some listen to podcasts to block out strange sounds. Some play funny shows just to keep the mind relaxed. Some keep headphones close like part of the regular gear. Even something simple like carrying bear spray can make a person feel safer even when statistics say the risk is low. The change happens when fear stops controlling decisions and starts becoming just another feeling to manage. And honestly, that shift takes time. Writing things down after each trip helps more than people expect. Keeping a small journal makes it easier to see progress. One trip might feel stressful, the next one feels a little easier, and the one after that feels almost normal. Looking back at notes shows which worries actually mattered and which ones only existed in the mind. That kind of reflection separates useful caution from unnecessary panic. Every small success counts. Finding a good campsite alone feels like a win. Fixing a small gear problem without help feels like a win. Even sleeping through the night without jumping at every sound feels like a win. Confidence builds from those small moments, not from one big adventure. Safety plans also make a huge difference, and most experienced solo campers never skip this part. Letting someone know where the trip is happening, when the trip starts, and when the trip should end creates a safety net. Sharing locations, dates, and even simple details about clothing helps others know what to look for if something goes wrong. Technology also helps now. Location tracking apps, satellite messengers, and personal locator beacons give peace of mind even in places without signal. Knowing that help can still be reached changes the whole feeling of being alone. Another big fear usually comes from worrying about strangers, and that fear stops many women from even trying solo travel. Self-defense classes often help with that part more than expected. Learning how to read situations, trust instincts, and react with confidence makes the outdoors feel less threatening. The goal is not to become fearless. The goal is to feel prepared. And preparation changes everything. Friends and family sometimes worry too, and those worries can make solo travel feel harder to explain. Questions come up again and again. Why go alone? Why take the risk? Why not just travel with someone else? Explaining the reasons helps calm those reactions. Talking about safety plans, training, and careful choices shows that solo trips are not about being reckless. Solo trips are about learning independence step by step. And once that independence starts growing, turning back becomes harder than moving forward. Why solo female wild camping is still worth doing. Personal growth from solo trips usually sounds like something people say just to sound deep, but a closer look shows that spending time alone in nature really changes the way a person thinks. Think about the simple act of going camping alone. Setting up shelter without help, gathering firewood without anyone sharing the work, and figuring out directions without another person checking the map forces the mind to work differently. How could confidence not grow after handling all of that alone? Every small problem solved in the wild becomes proof that personal ability is stronger than expected. When a tent finally stands after a few failed tries, when a fire finally starts after several attempts, when the right trail finally appears after walking in the wrong direction, something shifts inside. A quiet realization starts forming that says if all of this can be handled alone out here, then why would everyday problems feel impossible? One study even found that spending 4 days in nature improved problem-solving skills by around 50%. That sounds surprising at first, but does it really sound strange when thinking about how the brain works without constant noise, messages, and pressure? Out in nature, every decision matters, and every action has a direct result. That kind of environment trains the mind without anyone even noticing the training happening. Solo camping also forces growth in a way that group trips never can. When other people come along, work gets divided without much thought. One person carries extra gear, another person cooks, another person handles directions. Nothing feels too hard because responsibility spreads across everyone. But what happens when nobody else is there? Every task falls on one person. Every mistake belongs to one person. Every success also belongs to one person. That balance feels uncomfortable at first, but that discomfort is exactly what builds strength. How can real confidence grow if someone else is always fixing problems before a lesson is learned? When a trip goes wrong during a solo experience, there is nobody to blame. And when a trip goes right, there is nobody else to take credit. Both sides teach something important. Failure teaches patience and adjustment. Success teaches self-trust. After enough of those moments, the mind starts believing that personal ability is real, not just something people talk about. That belief slowly carries over into normal life. Office stress does not feel as overwhelming. Relationship problems do not feel as confusing. Difficult conversations do not feel as scary. If a person can stay calm alone in the woods at night, then why would a tense meeting or a disagreement feel impossible to handle? Another interesting part of solo camping comes from the way society reacts to it, especially when women choose to travel alone, camp alone, or backpack alone. Even today, that choice still makes people look twice. Why does something so simple still feel unusual to so many observers? For a long time, society repeated the idea that outdoor adventures needed male presence for safety, strength, or protection. That idea stayed around so long that many people stopped questioning it. But solo campers started asking a different question. Why should any outdoor experience depend on waiting for someone else to come along? Why should freedom need permission? The moment a woman packs gear alone and heads into the wilderness, that moment quietly challenges years of conditioning. No speeches are needed. No arguments are needed. The action itself says enough. Confidence grows even more when a person realizes that many limits were never real dangers, but only expectations repeated over and over. Once that realization happens, it becomes hard to go back to thinking the old way. Nature itself also plays a huge role in this whole experience, and the effect is not just emotional, but physical and mental too. Research has shown that spending about 120 minutes each week in nature improves overall health and well-being. That number sounds very exact, but the feeling behind it makes sense. Think about how the mind feels after hours of noise, screens, and constant talking. Everything feels tight, rushed, and crowded. Now, think about sitting near trees, hearing wind move through leaves, or watching a fire burn slowly without needing to do anything else. Why does the mind calm down so quickly in that kind of setting? Scientists found that even a 90-minute walk in nature lowers activity in parts of the brain connected to negative thoughts. That means the brain literally relaxes when the environment becomes quiet and natural. Nature does not demand attention the way phones and traffic do. Nature holds attention gently. That difference matters more than most people realize. When attention is not being pulled in 10 directions at once, emotions finally get space to settle. Thoughts that felt overwhelming start making more sense. Problems that looked huge start looking smaller. Time alone outdoors also removes many daily distractions that normally cover up feelings. Without constant conversations, notifications, and noise, the mind has time to notice what is really going on inside. That can feel uncomfortable at first. Why do so many people avoid being alone with thoughts for too long? Probably because silence makes everything clearer. But that clarity can also heal. When emotions get time to move without interruption, the mind slowly organizes itself. Stress starts to loosen. Worry stops running in circles. Confidence grows without forcing it. By the end of a solo trip, many people notice something strange. The world did not change, but the way the world feels has changed. Problems still exist, responsibilities still exist, but the reaction feels different. A quiet belief starts to settle in the background that says difficult things can be handled, step by step, just like setting up a shelter, just like finding a trail, just like making a fire when the first attempt fails. And once that belief appears, it tends to stay there long after the camping trip ends. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.